Donald Trump's hush money criminal trial is now on the cusp of its historic conclusion, with closing arguments set to begin tomorrow morning. Let's bring in CNN Justice correspondent Jessica Schneider. So Jessica, walk us through what court is going to look like over these next few days.
Yeah, we will finally be back up tomorrow morning at 9:30. It's been a week-long break in this trial so far, and tomorrow will be the closing arguments. This is the final chance for the lawyers on both sides to get up, make their final pitches directly to the jury. Interestingly, in New York, the defense actually goes first. So we will hear from Todd Blanche making the summations. And we're expecting, the defense only put up 2 witnesses over the course of about 90 minutes. Donald Trump did not testify in his own defense. But of course, the defense doesn't have to put up a case. It is all up to the prosecution to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's exactly what the defense will stress here. And they'll probably focus much of their closing on Michael Cohen. They'll talk about how the jury should doubt his credibility, talk about the fact that he's a convicted liar, and then ask the jury to really be skeptical of Michael Cohen pointing the finger at Donald Trump, tying him directly to this scheme, and more importantly, tying him directly to the repayment. When it comes to the prosecution, they'll talk about Michael Cohen, but they'll say it's not just Michael Cohen's testimony. It's also all of the evidence we have painstakingly amassed through all those other witnesses. And they'll point to the basis of the 34-count indictment for falsification of business records, which includes the 11 checks to reimburse Michael Cohen, many of which were signed by Donald Trump, also the 11 invoices, and then the 12 vouchers. So they will really focus in probably on that hard evidence as opposed to just Michael Cohen's testimony. So it's going to be hours of closings tomorrow. It could run all day. After that point, whether it's tomorrow afternoon or even Wednesday morning, the judge will then charge the jury, give them the jury instructions, and then it's deliberations, and we'll see how long those last.
Yeah, it's supposed to take about an hour. The delivering of the instructions could be pivotal in the case, depending on how jurors read those instructions.
It probably will be pivotal, how the judge tells the jury to evaluate the law, and then how they apply it to the facts.
Jessica Schneider, thanks so much for walking us through that. Look forward to a busy day tomorrow,
Yes.
Jessica. Thanks so much. Let's bring in our legal experts now. Jennifer Rogers and Victoria Nurse are with us. Jennifer, how important are closing arguments in a case like this, especially after the jury's had about a week off?
Yeah, it's incredibly important, Boris. It's always important. The summations are a critical time for both sides. But here, where there's been such stopping and starting with the evidence too, they really need to remind the jurors of what happened weeks ago now. David Pecker was the first witness, and that seems like ages ago. So prosecutors will really want to take the jury in a really organized way through the evidence and explain how it is that the evidence meets up with the law as the judge will describe it to them so that they've met their burden. And the defense really will do the opposite, right? Their summation is critical as well, but more for saying, listen, this is messy. This is not clean cut. There's so much reasonable doubt here. You can't possibly convict. So critical for both sides, really high stakes.
So Victoria, just based on what Jennifer laid out for the defense, I imagine that part of them showing this whole thing is messy and not clear cut is going after Michael Cohen's testimony and his credibility. Do you think that'll be central to their approach to closing?
Yeah, I think that their only job here is to convince them that there are reasonable doubts. And that's what they're going to say. You can't listen to Michael Cohen when he said there was no retainer, because that's key to the question of whether Trump lied on the business records. They'll say that his story just doesn't add up. I think it's to the advantage of the prosecution that they are going last, because they'll have the chance to give the jury a complete and compelling story. And that's where it's, as Jennifer indicated, this is very important for the prosecution. The jurors have not been in for a long time. They need to hear the whole story put together simply that Donald Trump paid off a porn star and then he falsified the records to hide it for the purposes of winning an election. And they got to prove each element of that.
Jennifer, when it comes to the prosecution and they're going last, how important is it for them to make the case to jurors that they could prove Trump's guilt even without Michael Cohen's testimony?
Yeah, Boris, they definitely will make that point. It's interesting. In New York, the defense goes first, prosecutors go last. In federal court, prosecutors get to go first and last. So that's what certainly at least Todd Blanche and Emile Beauvais are used to. So this is a different way of doing things, but it's critical for them to say, listen, Michael Cohen, usually you would say something along the lines of, you don't have to like him, but let me tell you why you should believe him. Here's why he's corroborated, et cetera, et cetera. But I think prosecutors Hill will also want to make the point, as you mentioned, that even without Michael Cohen, they can still convict. And some of that is because there's only really one area where Michael Cohen provides the only direct evidence, and that's as to whether the former president knew about the way the reimbursement scheme was happening. And even there, prosecutors will say, listen, you heard evidence from so many witnesses here that he never paid a cent without knowing exactly what it was for. You knew that the invoices were stapled to the checks. There's just no way, given all that you've heard, that he didn't know exactly what was going on. Use your common sense with all of this. So I think they certainly will make the argument that while jurors should believe Michael Cohen, they don't have to in order to convict.
Victoria, is there a key piece of evidence or testimony that you expect the jury is going to focus on during deliberations?
Well, they have to focus on the documents and questions, if they're false records. I mean, this is like an obstruction case. So they can believe the whole thing about the catch and kill scheme that David Pecker enunciated, but not believe that the records were falsified. And so they'll be looking at the records. They say retainer. Michael Cohen says, no, there was no retainer. Obviously, that's about his credibility. But it was also, the story is whether that all coheres, whether it makes sense with Hope Hicks and the catch and kill scheme. So the documents are key to this to stay exactly what, we've just heard, Boris, which is that they want to say even without Michael Cohen, you can see that these things are falsified.
It is going to be a complex picture to paint. We'll see how they do it. Jennifer Rogers, Victoria Nurse, thank you both so much.